Do you believe in miracles? Yes. You know the famous call. And here we are, more than 4 decades later in the 1980 men's Olympic team in the Oval Office, as you just saw there, alongside President Trump being honored on this day. I thank you for being with us tonight here on the Hill. I'm Blake Burman. There was a host of news as well there from reporters putting questions to President Trump. And if you were listening with us over the last few minutes, you'll notice that a handful of those questions had to do with health care. What about extending the ObamaCare tax credits? What about a new plan from Republicans? Well, tonight there is breaking news up on Capitol Hill on that front, as we are learning now that House Republicans have put forward their health care plan. And that is where we begin tonight. Our Joe Khalil live with us up on Capitol Hill. Joe, this came down within the last hour here. It's why so many questions were just put before President Trump about what he supports, what he doesn't support, and what might come next. What can you tell us about this plan and the reality of what might be next?
Yeah, Blake, you're right. 5 o'clock on a Friday, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson finally released this long-awaited Republican health care plan, which is intended to try to bring health care premiums down and be an alternative to several of the Democratic proposals that put forward. We've been hearing about this plan in pieces. Now we actually have a bill. It's 111 pages just released. So here is what's actually in it at first glance here. Reforming a pharmacy benefit manager process. So that is sort of trying to get rid of the middleman between patients and getting their drugs, providing funds for lower-income Americans, cost sharing to help premiums go down, and trying to create more options for employers to find health care across different markets to sort of force competition, again, with the hope of bringing premiums down. Blake, but what's going to be most notable here is not what's in the bill, what is not in the bill, and that is any extension, any mention of the ACA, Affordable Care Act, subsidies that are going to expire in January. That will almost certainly guarantee there are not going to be any Democrats that vote for this. This will certainly not pass the Senate as it's written right now. And premiums for people, for 22 million Americans, will very likely still go up, at least in the short term in January. We've heard from Democrats who say it's a non-starter. We've heard from some Republicans who say they want at least a short-term expansion of those ACA subsidies. Take a listen to what Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, we do not have that sound right now. But effectively, she was saying this morning, why not just extend subsidies for the short term, and then we can work on a longer-term plan later. A lot of Republicans, Blake, as I've been reporting, feel the same way. This plan does not do that, but it'll be interesting to see how lawmakers digest this over the weekend and what they come back with on Monday.
Joe Khalil, live for us with this breaking news at this hour up on Capitol Hill tonight. Joe, thank you. With me now, Chris Steyerwalt, host of the Hill Sunday, NewsNation political editor, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello, sir.
Professor.
We just heard President Trump get asked several different ways sort of about what he wants and what comes next here, Chris. 2 things I noticed. One, he kept talking about money going to the people. And then with Tom Emmer, congressman standing there, who is part of Republican leadership in the House, he said to Emmer, "I'll leave it to them," meaning the House. And it feels like that's where things are right now for the president and Republicans.
Did you hear the story about how the White House wants to run another reconciliation package so that they can end around Democrats in the Senate on Pentagon funding, so they can increase Pentagon funding? Now there are Senate Republicans or people around Senate Republicans who say, why not do this there, right? Why not run the legislation that Senators Mike Crapo and Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, why not run that on this? Here's the problem. Republicans don't want to own the increases, and we're talking here about $1,000 a month for some people. They don't want to own the increases in the premiums, but I'm not sure that enough Republicans are ready to own the plan of replacement. Right? And we remember what happened with Obamacare replacement back in the first Trump term. Are Republicans really ready to say, we are going to grab a hold of health care with 2 arms, with no Democratic votes on it, and take ownership of it? I don't know.
They were trying to get this done by tonight, Chris, and it's not like it was like naming a post office, where you can just get a bunch of people together and, do it on a Friday night and get it done. And it gets to the point of what's actually realistic here and not going forward.
Well, that House bill is a messaging bill, which is a Washington term for fake legislation, right? This is legislation that they know is dead on arrival in the Senate if they can get every Republican to vote for it, and I doubt that they can get every Republican to vote for it. This is so that Republicans can cover their patooties and say, we're working on it. We are, and it's those Senate Democrats. So they're trying to put the pressure on Senate Democrats and say, well, we offered them a bill and we couldn't get to 60 votes and it's the Democrats' fault. But Tom Till, a senator from North Carolina, said, it won't wash, right? He said he voted for the Republican version. He said, but if you don't extend these premiums, people are expecting them, right, and they're going to get crushed, and they're going to punish Republicans brutally in 2026 if they do.
And again, the deadline here for at least extending the ObamaCare Act tax credits is the end of the year. Congress is in session next week, a couple days after that, and that's it. Hence the race against the calendar. Chris Stirewalt, thank you, sir.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the Hill, a Midwest mess. The University of Michigan's head football coach, would you look at this, making his first appearance today in court after he was fired and arrested all in one day. What we know about Sharon Moore and the charges tonight, plus stacks of cash, first-class tickets, and luxury cars. New documents showing how Minnesota fraudsters allegedly spent millions of dollars intended for kids. And a fight involving Area 51. Veterans who worked on top secret projects at the highly classified Air Force Base say the work gave them cancer and they're being denied care. We will hear from one of those vets coming up. I'm Blake Burman. I thank you for being with us. Back on the other side, 4 minutes out. Former University of Michigan head football coach Sharon Moore appearing in court virtually from inside a jail cell today. The ex-head coach now faces 3 charges: home invasion and the 3rd degree stalking and breaking and entering. In a matter of hours on Wednesday, Moore went from the head coach of the winningest team in college football history to former coach to jail, throwing the University of Michigan's football program into chaos with it. The school says Moore was fired over a, quote, inappropriate relationship with a staff member. A few hours later, police were then called to a home near Michigan Stadium.
Subject just called a caller and told her there's a male at the location and the house attacking her. The state's been stalking her for months. We just got a call from S1's wife in Ann Arbor saying that the subject is suicidal.
Sharon Moore in court today. Our Mills Hayes live tonight in Michigan with the very latest. Mills?
Hi, Blake. Sharon Moore allegedly barged into the home of a woman that he had an intimate relationship with for a number of years on Wednesday. And prosecutors say that the victim broke up with the married football coach Monday morning. Moore allegedly continued to call and text the victim, who did not respond. Eventually, the victim told University of Michigan officials who fired Moore on Wednesday for having an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. Prosecutors say that Moore then went to the victim's home Wednesday after he was fired.
Immediately then proceeded to a kitchen drawer, grabbed several butter knives and a pair of kitchen scissors, and began to threaten his own life. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to make you watch. My blood is on your hands. You ruined my life.
Prosecutors say the victim was terrorized by the experience. Moore allegedly only left after the woman said she would call the police. He was arrested later that day, taken for a mental health evaluation, and then booked into jail. Moore's defense attorney, Joe Simon, said Moore had no prior criminal history and poses no threat to the public. Simon adding that he has not seen a police report or discovery in this case. Moore was ordered to have a GPS tracking monitor before he was released on a $25,000 bond today. The judge ordered Moore not to contact the victim, use alcohol or other substances, and not to possess a weapon. He's also been ordered not to leave the state of Michigan and to undergo another mental health evaluation. This whole case, though, has Michigan fans wondering what this could mean for the future of the football program, with 2 players already choosing to decommit from the team, Blake.
From wearing a headset to wearing a tracking monitor, our Mills Hayes live tonight Ann Arbor, Michigan, with the very latest. Joining us now, Aaron McMahon, one of the top sports writers covering the Wolverines. He works for M Live Media with us tonight. Aaron, thanks for being with us. There's a whole lot you can get to here. Let me start with the university president, the interim, said when the findings of a university investigation into Coach Moore's behavior were presented on Wednesday, we immediately terminated his employment. There is absolutely no tolerance for this conduct at the University of Michigan. But Aaron, you know this. There had been a lot of rumblings about this relationship. There's a lot of questions tonight, is there not, in Ann Arbor about who might have known what and when?
Absolutely. You know, there have been rumors flying about this relationship for months now, going back to the beginning of the year. But it's hard to not nail down. You know, you talk to people, you hear things, you don't know for sure or not. Michigan started an investigation, my understanding, in October, and they were able to, they finally got the missing piece of the puzzle, so to speak, this week. And that was kind of the final nail in the coffin for Sharon Moore. Michigan's athletic director, Warren Manuel, moved to fire him without cause. Which basically means Michigan doesn't have to pay the rest of his contract. So it's been a wild week. It's really been a wild couple of years between the NCAA investigations and now this.
What's your sense of what's happening on campus tonight, Aaron? I mean, you've got the winningest program in college football history. They've sold out 100,000 plus for more than 300 games. I mean, this is a lot to a lot of folks, and there's a lot of questions tonight. What's your sense of where the university is heading now?
Yeah, a lot of disappointment, embarrassment. If you talk to students, you talk to even athletes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's another black stain on the Michigan football program, and it's unfortunate, right? They're coming off a national championship just a couple of years ago. Sharon was the handpicked predecessor for Jim Harbaugh. He was considered a rising star in the college football coaching world.
Yep.
He was a first-time head coach, but Michigan had high hopes for him, and then to suddenly fall like this, I think it was a disappointment for many folks around him.
Transfer portal opens January 2nd. That's essentially free agency these days in college football. When do you think Michigan hires its coach?
I think before then. They're going to probably have to move pretty quickly. Unfortunately for them, it's at the tail end of the coaching carousel, they like to call it at this point. However, Michigan is a big enough brand. They have the money where I think they can go and pluck some other folks. You know, the Alabama coach, Kalen DeBoer, is a name that's come up. Jed Fish at Washington. Michigan will be able to find someone, but they're going to have to move quickly.
700,000 living alumni at the University of Michigan who are following this story, and really millions across the country considering this fall from grace and seeing Sharon Moore in a courtroom or in a jail cell today. Aaron McMahon is one of the top reporters there covering the Wolverines in the great city of Ann Arbor. Aaron, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Still much more ahead tonight here on The Hill, including fraudsters allegedly vacationing in the Maldives with taxpayer dollars intended for children in need. The shocking details in the Minnesota fraud scheme engulfing that state, and the latest comments from the president. Plus, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the alleged gang member erroneously deported to an El Salvadorian prison earlier this year. He is now a free man, for now. Our Allie Bradley, you know we always see Allie down there on the border? A different scenario tonight. Allie live with us in studio on this case and brand new News Nation exclusive reporting. First-class plane tickets, luxury cars, fine jewelry. All these lavish things allegedly bought by Minnesota fraudsters with taxpayer money intended for hungry children. New documents obtained by News Nation show hundreds of millions of dollars worth of funds were spent in the fraud scheme engulfing Minnesota's social services programs. The case prompting an investigation by the House Oversight Committee. The chairman of that committee, Congressman James Comer, telling me he thinks that this could potentially be an organized scheme and expanding beyond Minnesota.
I would go out on a limb and say that I would say this is happening in other states with other social programs, with other groups.
Our Rich McHugh has been all over this one all week long and has some brand new reporting on what he's learning tonight. Rich?
Hi, Blake. Yeah, finally we were seeing firsthand how they were spending these millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer funds that were bilked from Minnesota and from the welfare scandal there. And let's just say that they were living large and they were burning large amounts of cash. You know, when these indictments were first announced in September 2022, it was shocking even then.
They used this money that was supposed to be used for feeding children to buy houses in Minnesota, resort property and real estate in Kenya and Turkey, luxury cars, commercial property, jewelry, and much more.
But now these documents we've just obtained reveal the scope of this. You know, a gorgeous honeymoon in the Maldives. There's video of them popping champagne. They bought waterfront properties, real estate, in fact, entire buildings in Kenya, Porsches. These scammers were young and filthy rich, texting each other pictures like this. A box full of cash in this case. It's $250,000. And texting, "You are going to be the richest 25-year-old, inshallah." They wired millions to China and to Kenya. One text, they said, "Please send 1,000 to Mogadishu Baqarah," which appears to be a reference to a market in Somalia once controlled by the Al-Qaeda affiliate Al-Shabaab. Also the site of the 1993 Black Hawk Down incident where we lost 18 service members. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he said they're investigating and they're going to try and find any links of this money going to Somalia and to Al-Shabaab. And just this morning, he said they're going to be looking at more scrutiny on all monies going back to Somalia. Blake?
Yeah, investigating indeed, and it feels like this one is just beginning. Rich McHugh, live for us once again tonight. Rich, thank you. Well, Kilmar Abrego Garcia walking out of a Baltimore ICE facility, a free man today, after a judge barred ICE from re-detaining him less than a day after a judge ordered his release. Abrego Garcia is the alleged gang member who was deported to El Salvador earlier this year. Garcia spoke to a crowd of supporters outside afterwards.
No matter what this government says, in the end, I still believe that this is a country of laws, a country of justice, and that despite all the injustice that has been done, we will reach its end.
Now, the Trump administration is still fighting for his removal. Our own Allie Bradley has been all over the country, as you know, normally down on the border. You're here in Washington.
Here in Washington to discuss a lot live in living
person,
color.
Yes, there's a lot. So the administration, and nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Blake.
The administration still wants to get Abrego Garcia out of the country and to Liberia, we are learning tonight?
Yeah, so remember they talked about maybe removing him to Costa Rica. Well, now they're talking about potentially removing him to Liberia. That is the current status that they want to remove this man to. Now, you'll remember this is where Liberia is. If you don't know where it is on the map, it's in Africa, obviously, as you can see. But when it comes to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, there was a lot of back and forth. As you know, he was removed wrongfully to Sikot in El Salvador. That was an issue, so he was brought back after a lot of back and forth there.
Right.
Now he's once again potentially going to be removed, and we don't know the timeline of that, Blake. Obviously, there's that restraining order that he can't be detained right now, but it's likely that DHS, that the Trump administration, will work to remove him sooner than later.
All right, so you've been all over the country, right? And especially as the Trump administration goes from sort of city to city, a lot of the major American cities. Let's show it real quick. Whether it be LA, New Orleans is where you've spent, what, the last week or two, something like that, with the 250 arrests there. You have brand new reporting tonight on where the administration will not be making apprehensions and detentions. Tell me.
Yeah, so a lot of these places, right? So we know Los Angeles, we know Chicago, Operation Midway Blitz, we know Charlotte with the Charlotte's Web, and then New Orleans with the Catahoula Crunch. Now we can tell you that they are stopping the sweeping raids, those Home Depot raids. We're not going to be seeing Home Depot in the background of these videos
No more of
anymore.
those.
Not for the foreseeable future. Right now, we're going to be looking at targeted enforcement operations, as are going to be individuals who have committed heinous crimes. Because remember, everybody who's crossed the border to this administration is a criminal. So just saying they're going after criminals is not necessarily enough anymore. They're going to be going after targets, people that they're on a docket, people that they know have committed crimes like rape, murder, things like that. But they're not going to necessarily be doing these sweeping raids. Now, we'll also see them on traffic stop enforcement as well. That's something that we can also see them doing, running license plates, seeing if someone is here legally or not, and then making the apprehension through that. But we're not going to be seeing them necessarily grabbing people off the streets like we've seen. And in this situation, this was a Home Depot sweep. We did see someone run, and we saw this apprehension in real time.
So I want to show for our audience here on News Nation or those listening to us on SiriusXM the president's approval ratings, right? Because this was his best issue, immigration, President Trump's. And you can go back to April. It was basically, Allie, a 50-50 split, right? So here's April. This is June, which was when we saw the scenes unfold in Los Angeles. But look at what's happened since. And right now, 38% 60% disapprove of the president's immigration policies, only 38% approve. And now you're telling me that they're going to stop things like those Home Depot raids. Is it because of this?
What happened right here, right? In LA, we saw that unfold in real time. We saw the Home Depot raid that led to that huge clash at Paramount. We saw massive issues in LA. Then that continued into Chicago as well. We saw those sweeping raids. And you see the polling right now, and you kind of see the court of public opinion, and you see that that's not a favorable thing. They don't necessarily, when you talk to anyone, Blake, especially on the streets, or you go to any of these city council meetings, people that are in favor, they'll say, we like what's happening. We don't like how it's being done. And so it seems that they're shifting this tactic a little bit to fit more of what people want to see and to maybe improve the ratings here that we're seeing. But it's important to note, too, that with this operation in a red state, it's not necessarily a red city in New Orleans, but they are operating in the suburbs in Louisiana. And the reality is, Greg Bovino, right now, the commander, he says they've arrested 250 people in a week. The goal for the long term is 5,000 for Catahoula Crunch. But they have not had a single assault or a threat of violence or a vehicle ramming or anything like that in New Orleans. Completely different than we've seen in all of these different instances. So that's another piece that comes to play, because you see the assaults happening and you see the interactions with the public and the protesters, and that's not faring well either. And so that's not happening in New Orleans.
Very complex issue, of course. Allie Bradley, great to see you. All over the country. Come back again soon. Allie, thank you. All right, now out to the state of Nevada, and one of the most secretive sites in the U.S. Area 51, and there is a brewing fight now between the Pentagon and a group of veterans who served there.
We did something important. We did good work. We changed things. We don't deserve being ignored by saying we don't exist.
Earlier this year, NewsNation reported that veterans who served at Area 51 are now getting sick, many dying of cancer, but can't get the help they need because the Pentagon and the way that the Pentagon classifies their service. Now, after NewsNation's reporting aired, lawmakers moved to add a fix to the defense bill that would require the military to acknowledge the range as contaminated and identify everyone who served there. But it was written out of the legislation before it even came up for a vote. The ranking member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs is Representative Mark Takano.
What I heard is that the Department of Defense did not want to hand over the classified information. They didn't want to compromise the so-called privacy of Area 51.
Now those veterans are turning directly to President Trump for help. Our Natasha Zuves on this story tonight. Natasha, we're talking about Area 51 and Congress.
Yeah, and I just spoke with Representative Takano today. Hi there, Blake. He's describing this as a pit in his stomach at this result. These veterans finally saw a lifeline after our reporting aired, and now that lifeline is gone. The provision in the defense bill would have finally given these vets a path to prove where they'd served. It had bipartisan support in the Senate. It was stripped, as you said, and final negotiations and House leadership let it die.
We don't even regret the job. The regret now is that too many believe that we'll all die off before they act. And, you know, we're more concerned about those we leave behind. We know our fate. And you can't say you're good with it, but you're good with it. You know it. You can't unwind what's happened, but at least allow us to help take care of our families.
You think the government is trying to wait you out?
100%. They know the average age on our list is 62 years old. It's gotten worse, not better. And, you know, I turned 61 in 2 months.
When we first told the vet story in February, their memorial list had 446 names. Tonight, that stands at 527. And now they're turning to President Trump, asking for an executive order.
Mr. President, we need your help. He's the one that has the power to fix it.
NewsNation reached out to the White House. President Trump's team saying in a statement he cares deeply about our veterans, pointing to VA backlogs reduced, new clinics opened, adding, quote, "We do not have further announcements on this topic at this time." The veterans say their message to President Trump is simple: to do what Congress didn't, to make sure their country shows up for them now, not just to fold a flag after they're gone. Blake.
Natasha Zuvis live tonight on that battle between Area 51 and Washington. All right, still to come. The deadline for Congress to act on health care almost here. Is an 11th hour deal within reach? The very latest and the breaking news on the other side.
I think what most Republicans want to see is what I want to see, and I leave it to them, and hopefully they're going to put great legislation on this desk right here. We want to see all of the money that's been squandered and given to insurance companies, because Obamacare is horrible health insurance. It's far too expensive, and it always has been. But what it really is a way of making insurance companies rich.
President Trump just moments ago speaking about those Obamacare tax credits, which are set to expire at the end of this year, so just 21 days from now. If that happens, it would raise health insurance premiums for millions of Americans, at least 24 million. House Republicans, at about 5 o'clock this evening, just released their plan. And that was part of the reaction from the president moments ago. Full panel here with me now. Domenico Montanaro is a senior political editor and correspondent for NPR. Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist. And Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here on this Friday. Appreciate it. Friday at 5 is normally a news dump kind of time. And that's when Republicans put this out. I think it goes to show how they knew that they needed to get something out there. The question is, what happens with this 111-page plan that they just put out?
Well, I mean, how long have we been talking about this? I mean, I feel like a significant majority of my career covering politics now I've been talking about healthcare policy. Right. And, you know, look, this is a plan that is probably dead on arrival when it comes to winning over Democrats, because it does nothing for any of those direct payments, even that President Trump was talking about, whether it's to insurance companies or to people. And the Senate plan, which is $1,000 to $1,500 a month for those who have bronze plans, I mean, health insurance has gone up way more than that, or it could go up way more than that if these premiums aren't extended. And you're looking at like a 5 to 10% coupon, essentially, and that's not really a fix. Obviously, the healthcare plans, you know, the healthcare in the country is something that's been an issue for a very long time. There's no seeming room for compromise between these two sides right now, because there's no discussion about what you do in the short run to extend those subsidies for the people who are going to be affected next year.
Here's what I keyed on, Aaron. The president saying about health care and wanting direct payments and a plan. He said, quote, "I leave it to them," meaning Congress.
Yes.
That's a pretty big delegation from the president of the United States and the leader of the Republican Party.
Well, it's also where the legislation should come from. That's the legislative body. He's set out his parameters and what he'd like to see, which is direct payments to the American people versus direct payments to insurance companies. He set some parameters. However, as much as I would love to be the Republican who sits here and just goes crazy on Obamacare, because I know it's a disaster of legislation, Republicans don't win by continuing to litigate the failures of Obamacare. This is a Democrat piece of legislation. We know it. It's named after President Obama. That is very clear. The American people don't care. What they care about is that at the end of the year, their insurance subsidies might go up. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that there be income caps and that there be protection on there if it is taxpayer dollars, and we be good stewards of that. But at this point, Republicans either need to be willing to extend the subsidies and give people a ramp, or start putting together a short-term ramp and a long-term policy proposal. The one thing I don't want to hear is from people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's sitting here saying, just do a clean, short extension. Isn't that what Republicans were asking for when you guys shut down the government for all of that time? All I'm saying is the political noise will be loud here. But Republican leadership is the only option to save the American people from the Democrat disaster.
I think whether you're for this or against this, I think the reality is the thing that Washington does best is punt.
Oh, yes.
Do nothing, punt,
we love
and short
deadlines.
term.
Mm-hmm.
And so is that what's likely to happen here, Dan, which is they say, you know what, we can't let 24 million Americans have their health care premiums go up double we'll do something in the short run and then negotiate a bigger thing later.
Yeah, but punting is hard to imagine. They could do it, Blake, but if by punting you mean extension in the short term, this House caucus is narrowly divided. It's difficult to imagine that caucus getting around any kind of solution like that because of the Freedom Caucus pressure.
Well, just on Republican votes, I think
Sure,
is what
sure,
you're
but
saying.
even just to put that before the caucus itself and before the chamber, and then the Senate side, you've got some challenges there. They could do that. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's got some hurdles. But Aaron's right. Whether you like the policy or not, and I happen to like the policy because there's 100 million Americans who don't have to worry about pre-existing conditions to get health care coverage. There's 24 million Americans in the marketplace and 24 million more on Medicaid expansion. It's done incredibly good for the American people. And if you don't like that particular policy, have a plan 15 years after this was introduced.
You and I were talking about that before in the green room about how the whole reason there isn't a plan and people keep getting stuck on it is this has been happening for over a decade now.
Yes.
John McCain in the Senate voting down. I mean,
and just really quickly, but to me, I think the American people understand that what you do in legislation and in your time in Congress is about your priorities and choices. And earlier this year, temporary tax cuts were extended, and just the 1% that got those tax cuts got $132 billion, 5 times what it costs to extend these tax credits.
How can you say that this is successful when I'm looking at annual health expenditure per person? For a comparable country, you're talking about $6,000. For the United States of America, it's $14,885. I think that's what most people want to know, Domenico, is why has healthcare cost so much, and why are we still here 15 years later trying to figure this thing out?
Because they never solved it in the first place.
Okay.
And it became a political...
But you would disagree with that?
Well, it solves some things, not everything.
Okay. No, I mean, right. I mean, I'm talking about comprehensively. This was not solved in 2009 or 2010, and in fact, it became a political issue, right? And Republicans smelled, blood in the water on this issue because of all those town halls in 2010, the rise of the Tea Party, and it became a good issue for Republicans to be able to win in 2010 and win those 63 seats when President Obama then said, the Democrats took a shellacking, was his words, right? What we've seen over the past 15 years has been a steady rise in the favorability rating.
Yeah, let's show it. Obamacare approval.
As well,
Obamacare approval at an all-time new high at 57%, Aaron.
Yeah, and I think that's more of a branding thing than the reality of the health care that the American people are getting. Dan's talking about more people have more access and pre-existing conditions. I think pre-existing conditions are now universally understood in this country as something to be protected. But the cost that Republicans warned about on Obamacare, about insurance premiums continuing to rise on the American people, was absolutely correct. And the word Obamacare might be popular, but the American people do not like their health insurance.
40 states expanded Medicaid expansion under Obamacare because it was good politics in red states and in blue states. And people like my Uncle Mike, who's 82 and a Navy vet, who has almost no income, is reliant on that health care coverage to survive every day. There's lots of Americans, millions of them, that need this. And yes, it didn't fix everything, but it fixed a lot of things.
Dan, Aaron, Domenico, thank you so much. Appreciate it. A lot of news, believe it or not, on a Friday night, still to come. Other side of the break. We're back in a few. Well, it's one of the great moments in American sports history, perhaps maybe the greatest in American sports history. The Miracle on Ice game, the 1980 U.S. men's hockey team, a bunch of kids, amateurs, college players defeating the Soviet Union at the time. Today, the president signing a bill into law that awards them the Congressional Gold Medal. Micah Ruzioni, the captain of that team, saying, at this point, what else can you give that group of guys? A remarkable moment in sports history that continues today inside the Oval Office. Well, Elizabeth Vargas reports. Coming up next here on News Nation, she is talking to the man who helped the Venezuelan opposition leader escape from the country. Speaking of remarkable, that is an incredible story of what happened there. Elizabeth will have the very latest just seconds away. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. Hope you have a great weekend.